And now, marine weather around Alaska.
I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan, and I want to wish you an early Happy New Year. This is the Alaska Marine Weather Outlook that'll take us through New Year's Day and into the early New Year period. Looking at the sea ice as of this Sunday, the last day of 2023, ice is extensive throughout the far north Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait. We're going to see some polynyas open up along areas of the west and northwest coast as the result of very strong easterly winds that will develop later New Year's Day and especially by Tuesday, more so Tuesday and beyond. Very strong winds across the Arctic coast, and they'll build back toward the east, and they could last a good portion, at least through midweek, in some cases maybe even into Friday over toward Kaktovik, but there will be considerable blowing and drifting snow, creating whiteout conditions, essentially a ground blizzard. Not much in the way of falling snow, just blowing and drifting snow. Now, as we go further south, we have plenty of ice down through Norton Sound along the southwest, lower Yukon, Kuskokwim deltas into Bristol Bay. And with these winds, these strong easterly winds, we are going to see the ice want to push westward with time as a very powerful storm force low lifts its way up to the central and eastern Aleutians on Tuesday. So the way things are shaping up late this New Year's Eve into early New Year's Day, we'll have an area of low pressure out of the North Pacific. This is not the main one. This will actually weaken and then kind of just hang here and head eastward and be absorbed by a stronger front from this low. And as this low lifts northeastward up toward the central Aleutians, the pressure of that by the time we get into Tuesday afternoon will be down near or below 940 millibars. But I want to point out we have a strong high up around 1044, 1045 millibar high up in the central Arctic Ocean. That's eventually going to build southeastward into northwest Canada as you have this powerful low lift up into the lower Bering Sea Tuesday into early Wednesday. And it's going to set up a really big pressure gradient here between areas out over the Bering and northwest Canada, and that'll lie right across the Alaska mainland and certainly any of the northern and western coastal areas being impacted. So look at this low by Tuesday morning. We expect it to be bottoming out down near 938 millibars with an occluded front arcing ahead of it. We expect there could be some hurricane force wind gusts, low end up to 75 miles an hour there and through the eastern Aleutians as we go through later Monday night and Tuesday morning. Winds are going to be increasing out of the east across many areas of the mainland and especially along all the coastal areas. As a result, that's going to create blowing and drifting snow even where snow is not falling. Even as the system does spread some snow northward, it's not going to be especially heavy. It's more the winds taking the snow that already exists and causing it to blow and drift around, and in some cases creating whiteout conditions. Now, looking at areas of the southeast panhandle, it's been pretty mild. We do expect some pretty good winds gusting up to 40 knots here, the southern areas south of Sitka. 25 knot southeasterly winds, gust to 40, waves 15 feet. Turning more easterly, 25, 30 knots there, Gustavus off of Yakutat Bay to Cape Suckling. Inner channels, we're looking at southeast winds, 25 knots, Dixon Entrance, 8-foot waves, but east wind 15 knots, Stevens Passage, 3-4-foot waves, and north winds 20 knots with 3-4-foot waves inland canal on New Year's Day. By Tuesday, look for winds in the inner channels, southeast 20 knots, 6-7-foot waves, Dixon Entrance, 3-4-foot waves with gusts, easterly gust upwards to 35 knots in some cases, Stevens Passage in the middle channels. And then for the north there, Lynn Canal, north winds 25 knots, 5-foot waves for along the nearshore waters of the outer coast of the Gulf. We expect southeast to east winds 25 to 30 knots, waves generally running 15 to 17 feet. And then for the northwestern Gulf, strongest winds are going to be northeast to east gales at the entrance of Cook Inlet with 10 to 13-foot waves, highest there northeast of Kodiak City. Look for a northeast wind 50 knots, Prince William Sound with waves of 3 feet. For Tuesday, winds are going to pick up the further southwest you are. East winds 20 knots within Prince William Sound, 4-foot waves. Generally 30-knot easterly winds across areas outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, but we do expect easterly gales of 40 knots, lower Cook Inlet into areas off of the northeast there of Kodiak City and Kodiak Island as a result of an approaching strong front. Now, we'll see this in full force Monday. New Year's Day, we have a low that's still off here, weakening with gale force winds 35 to as high as 45 knots off of Chicknick and southwest of Kodiak Island. And those winds will turn around more east and then northerly up from Bristol Bay down to north of Cold Bay. Waves 5 to 7 feet on the Bering side, but we could see some waves swells upwards of 20 or just over 20 feet there in areas of the far southwestern Gulf and North Pacific. Now, here comes the big low Tuesday. By Tuesday afternoon, the low will be situated just north of the eastern Aleutians. And ahead of it, this front arcing ahead of it will have storm force winds upwards of 50 knots just southwest of Kodiak Island, coming in around Chicknick and even up into Bristol Bay. Waves on the North Pacific side running anywhere from 14 to as high as just over 20 feet south of False Pass. Little protection on the lee side here for the Bering Sea. Waves will generally be running 5 to 7 feet. So for Monday, looking at the Aleutians, here comes the big storm lifting out of the North Pacific up toward the central Aleutians. The center will come up here toward Atka. And we expect southerly gales, 35, 45 knots. And then as we get into Monday night, even stronger storm force winds with potentially higher gusts to low-end hurricane force, 75 miles an hour possible here in through the eastern Aleutians. 60-mile-an-hour gust Monday night into Tuesday morning on the backside of the low, Adak, creating blizzard conditions. And then for Tuesday, the center of the low is just to the north there, northeast of Atka and just northwest of Nikolsky. 45 to 50 knot winds ahead of it. On the backside, 60 mile per hour or 50 knot sustained storm force winds out of the northwest and west, Atka and Adak. So very powerful system. Now that's going to really pull in the offshore flow here along the southwest and west coast. We expect winds on Monday to increase to 35 knot easterly gales out of Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay, and even 30 knots out of Norton Sound, where plenty of ice is in place, but that's going to begin to push the ice westward. And then look what happens on Tuesday with that strong low center down there just north of the central eastern Aleutians. We see 50 knot easterly gales within Bristol Bay, 45 knot gales, I should say storm force winds there in Bristol Bay, and 45 knot gales out of Kuskokwim Bay, and then 35 to 40 knot gales all along areas of Norton Sound down through the lower Yukon Delta. So again, this is going to cause the ice to push and shift westward, opening polynyas up along areas of the southwest and western coastline. Then as we go up further north, notice Monday, New Year's Day, east-northeast winds, generally 30 knots through the Bering Strait, Kotzebue Sound, north side of St. Lawrence. Again, going to shift the ice, open up some polynyas. It's just starting. We could see winds as high as 35 knots there out of Wainwright, out of the east. Still relatively, winds kind of hold back a little bit here, Kaktovik, Prudhoe Bay, but then look what happens on Tuesday. This is just the beginning along the Arctic coast. 35 to 40 knot easterly gales. In some cases, these could increase as the stronger winds eventually build back toward the east as we go through midweek, especially later Wednesday, Thursday, early Friday. But all along these areas, 35 to 40 knot easterly gales, that will definitely cause the ice along the shoreline to try to pull away and open up some polynyas. So again, dangerous conditions, not just because of the ice shifting and moving, but we expect areas along the Arctic and West Coast to experience blizzard conditions at times with those strong winds. So be very careful coming up here once we get around, and especially just after the new year. And again, wish you a happy new year, but make it a safe one.